Hello. Welcome to another episode of Amazing Conversations. I am your host, Lady Andrea Revills. And as many of you may know, May is considered the month of mental health. It's mental health awareness. So given the current climate of our world, of our society, I know that this is a topic that has been trending. I know that it affects many families. So my guest tonight is the expert on this topic, and I would like to ask you to join me in welcoming my guest tonight, Miss Simone Bradley. How are you, Miss Bradley?
I'm good this evening. Thank you for having me, Andrea.
Great. So you and I discussed a little bit about yourself, but if you would, just kind of tell the audience a little about, what you do, where you're from, and things like that.
Okay. Again, my name is Simone Bradley, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Georgia. I have been practicing for over 15 years. And a lot of people ask me, what exactly is a marriage and family therapist?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say it's a fancy word for a counselor. The thing about a marriage and family therapist is that we not only provide individual therapeutic services, but we provide services for children, couples in premarital therapy, marital therapeutic services, also in addition to family therapy. And so in our training, one of the things that we look at is, even in working with and treating the individual, how does the system, how do families of upbringing, which we call families of origin, really play into what is going on with that person, even on an individual level or a couple's level. Mm-hmm. And I'm a fan of analogies, and one of the things that we look at is, again, if you're working with a couple, how does that individual's upbringing affect the dynamics of the relationship? Or if you're dealing with a sibling relationship, how does the family play a part in terms of what's going on? So being a family therapist and looking at individuals and families and couples, it's like a clock. You have a clock, but you have the spring, you have the minute hand, you have the numbers on the clock, and so you have all of these dynamic individual pieces working together that creates one whole. And that's how we look at systems therapy as marriage and family therapists. Mm-hmm. In terms of my background, I have some history in higher education.
Okay.
So I love working with our young adults. I have also worked very proudly with our combat veterans with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, working with our combat veterans who served all the way from Vietnam all the way up to OEF, OIF, OND, which is Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and Operation New Dawn. Mm-hmm. I have worked with children and adolescents in local community service boards and community mental health and counseling, and also have worked with individuals at our local outpatient practice at our local hospital, Phoebe Behavioral Health here in town. And not only with individuals on an outpatient basis, but patients on an inpatient basis as well. And so I don't claim to be an expert, but I have a variety and array of experience. And so that has been really good for me, because I've not just worked with children or young adults in higher education or combat veterans. And it really gives me a better understanding, Andrea, of what individuals are dealing with, whether they're children or adolescents, young adults, older adults in our geriatric population when it comes to mental health.
Absolutely.
I've seen it, and I really see that there are people out there that are really struggling and really not having a clear understanding in terms of how to cope with their individual or marital issues.
Right. So let me ask you, Simone, how exactly did you get on this path? I mean, was it something that you decided early as a child, and And even once you made the decision, what was your career path? Just in case someone else is watching and they may be interested in pursuing a field.
Absolutely. I really thought that I was going to be a ballet dancer at one point because I loved to dance. And then I thought that I was going to be a cardiac surgeon until I got older and I realized I couldn't take all the surgeries and the cutting and things of that nature. But I knew that I still could be helpful to other people. You know, whatever God has for you, He's going to give you skills and gifts and talents. And so we in the human realm think to ourselves, oh, this is going to be our path. But, you know, we know that God orders our steps. And so I was a senior at the University of Georgia, and I had an internship working with one of my professors. It led me to working with first-time juvenile offenders. And these are, you know, young people that really have a whole road ahead of them, various opportunities, and we know that sometimes they make mistakes.
Absolutely.
And this program, which was running out of Athens, Clarke County at the time in the mid-90s, really allowed for first-time juvenile offenders and their families to go through a series of family counseling sessions, 12-week program. And if you went through the program, completed the program successfully with your family, it wiped the slate clean for those first-time juvenile offenders. And so that gave that individual, that juvenile offender, an opportunity. And part of that program was to help reduce recidivism rates as well as juvenile offenders. And so it was one of my university professors that really encouraged me to go into the field of marriage and family therapy or some form of counseling. And so that was really a pivotal moment in my life because that really spoke to me. I took a year break intentionally, working at DFACS with families and working with families and the individuals there. And again, maybe it was the energy or something that they could sense, because they would always say to me, Simone, like, we really feel like we can really talk to you. And I knew that my path there was going to be short. And so almost a year to the date that I finished at the University of Georgia, I enrolled in my Master of Marriage and Family Therapy program.
Yeah. And you know, it's ironic you say that. Once I completed undergrad, DFACS was my first job also. And I'll tell you, in doing that job, I loved it, Simone. I loved the fact that I felt I was helping people, because that's always been a burning desire and passion of mine. But also in doing it, I think I worked that job 3 years, because when you are a passionate person and you love helping people, you can truly experience burnout, because you get to the point where you want everybody to get it. You want everybody to make it. And truth of the matter is, everybody doesn't make it.
You're right.
So for me, I had to make the decision, okay, let me step away from this area for a while. And I went totally corporate America. Did that for so many years, but then a lot of my community service still was kind of geared towards helping people. One of the things that I learned working with families, that no matter how much you try and give people a blueprint or help them to do better, not that they may not have the resources, but it's something up here that may not click. So what you do is vital, because you are a counselor. You can you understand, and you can kind of help people navigate through that. And I love the analogy you use with the clock and the systems, because again, that pretty much shows no matter, people can do things, but then they may, sometimes people don't understand why they do what they do. But you as a counselor and a therapist, you understand something in their upbringing triggered their response even in their adulthood. So I'd like to mention that from the point of I know you and I were talking a little, and you mentioned about you work with, all demographics, youth, veterans, and I know geriatrics. I know in our current climate, what we're dealing with as it relates to the pandemic, people being isolated at home, not being able to, visit like we used to have the freedom to do. Even with children, as simple as a routine of going to class. Can you tell me, have you seen, I guess, some certain things that maybe stick out to you in the school system working with young people? Because a lot of people, they think, well, young people, they don't have the problems. But I know that they do. Can you kind of shed a little light as it relates to how the pandemic may have affected even some of our younger population?
Absolutely. We already know that when it comes to mental health issues, we know that people in the African American community are disproportionately affected. And part of that is not only are we disproportionately affected because we don't seek care, but it has been compounded by the pandemic. And so when we take a look at what's going on right now, we know that as it relates to the crisis, 31% of people, according to a CDC study that actually was conducted in June of 2020, showed that about 31% of just individuals, or adults in particular, are struggling with anxiety and depression. And so we know that approximately 31% of adults are struggling with anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression just doesn't start at adulthood at age 18.
Right.
So we know that adults are struggling with anxiety and depression. We know that children perhaps are struggling with it as well, especially if you're dealing with an adult that there's this thing that we call transference. If you transfer those symptoms onto a child, because you as an adult are dealing with what you're dealing with, and you're living with your child, or your child is seeing what's going on with you, and they're struggling as well. And so what we're seeing in the school system with children, we're seeing increased rates of symptoms of depression, symptoms that correlate with anxiety. We're also seeing more outbursts, behavioral outbursts, and that's what we see first and foremost, because we know that for children, and really all people, behavior is a form of communication. So for example, if I'm happy, my response, my reaction is more likely maybe to smile, to be pleasant, to engage in conversation. That's a reaction or a behavior. But if I'm not having a good day, or if I'm struggling, or if I'm angry or depressed or upset, maybe I'm not going to give you eye contact. Maybe as a child, I'm going to come to class and have my hood on my head. Maybe I am going to be struggling with anger, and the teacher asked me to pull out a pencil and a sheet of paper, and I'm just not in a ready to learn mindset.
Wow.
And so I might not be able to tell you I'm struggling or I don't want to do that, but if I sling the pencil and a sheet of paper across the desk or across the classroom, that may be that student's way of saying, I don't want to do this, I'm hurting, I'm just not in the right frame of mind to be ready to learn, or there's a lot going on at home, and as a young child, let's take a 5-year-old, a pre-K student, a 6-year-old in first grade, how are they going to be able to tell the teacher that?
Right. So wait, let me point you a moment. You say a transference. So are you saying, based off of the parents' actions, if they may be dealing with depression or anxiety, the things that they do can literally transfer to their children, and their children start to display certain behavioral characteristics or traits that, wow.
Absolutely, Andrea. If I'm a parent, and I'm a parent who is living in a household, and I'm experiencing domestic violence, and a child or children are living in the home, and they are seeing, that interaction between parents or significant others. Then that child perhaps may be learning, this is the way that I deal with conflict. And so if I am now at school and I'm in dealing with conflict with a student, and I decide to deal with that conflict in an unhealthy manner, is it because I saw what I saw at home and that's what I'm learning, and so the behavior that I'm displaying at school is the behavior that I'm displaying at school because that's a learned behavior that I'm seeing at home. And so that's what I mean by transference.
Wow.
Or if I'm a parent that is struggling with anxiety and I'm always overly hypersensitive about things, or I'm always maybe on 100 instead of 10, and I'm, as a child, seeing my parent deal with issues in that way, again, a parent can transfer, or in layman's terms, a child can learn how to deal with things in their life in unhealthy or healthy ways based off of what they see going on in that home environment.
Wow. So how do the teachers deal with that? And I don't know whether you can answer that, but I guess I'm saying that because as I listen to what you're saying, I can see the children acting out, and a lot of times if you're just working with the educational part, you may not even have a thought that, okay, this child is acting out because something at home isn't right. I mean, is there some kind of therapy or counseling that the educators are given to recognize and notice these things, or how are they dealing with that?
One of the things that we do in the school system is we provide ongoing professional learning and development for teachers, because we understand that teachers have a lot on their shoulders in terms of academics and adhering to state standards and testing and things of that nature. And we know that teachers are not counselors, but we train them because we want them to have some sort of basic understanding in terms of mental health issues. So if you see a student struggling, can, as a teacher, pick up on, is that those behaviors or symptoms similar to depression? Are they similar to anxiety? Or I'm not even really sure, but I know that something is going on with my student because I've developed a relationship with him or her, and because I know my student and I know that something is out of the norm, I have a little bit of understanding as to this might be depression, it might be a little anxiety, something traumatic may have gone on that they experienced, and I'm not quite sure. But now that I've tried to do what I can do in terms of my classroom management strategies, because I want my student to be able to learn. But if I see that the ability to learn has been impeded, and I've done everything that I can do in the classroom, I have a calm down, cool down area. I've talked to the student. I've reached out to the family at home, but something else is going on that is beyond my scope, because again, we're not asking teachers to be therapists.
Right.
Now we can take it to the next level, and so that's why we have school counselors in place, and not only school counselors, we have community partnerships, and that is especially important even prior to the pandemic, Andrea. It's important to have community partnerships with stakeholders, and so that's where our local community resources come into play. For example, Albany Area Primary Health Care and Aspire's Child and Adolescent Department, we have a community partnership with those agencies that actually come into the schools, provide therapists in-house for our students.
Wow.
And so that is a tremendous opportunity and blessing, because a lot of school systems don't have that partnership set up. And so it allows access to care, because again, we're trying to break down some of those barriers in terms of access. It puts the therapist right there in the school system with our students.
So have you all seen a rise in the number of cases as it relates to the children and needing counseling or therapy since, of course, the pandemic?
I don't actually have the actual totals and numbers, but I would say that there has been an increased need for care because of the pandemic, yes.
I was talking to last month, of course, was Child Abuse Awareness Month, and I had a conversation with Dr. Fonda Thompson, and of course, one of the key points that she mentioned that because children were not at school, they had a concern that their numbers had actually decreased. And her concern was when children are actually physically going to school and people such as educators are noticing, okay, something's different or this child is responding differently, then they can make a report, or a referral, should I say. But because so many children are not in the classroom, there may be children that may be missing, I guess, that resource. To me, that's a touchy thing, because you never know, again, what people are dealing with at home in their home life. But when they can come and somebody else can put eyes on them. You said a key word, you said relationship. And when you have other relationships, then people will notice, okay, something's off balance, something's not correct. And of course they can make, the necessary referrals and get people the help that they need. My undergrad degree is in sociology, and you piqued my interest because you said, as it relates to even the transference, as it relates to some actions being learned. I remember one of my classes, and I'll tell you, Simone, I defended this. I defended my thought all the way till I had my first child. And let me tell you what it was. I had a professor, and he was teaching us and telling us, okay, what's the difference? Are certain behaviors learned or are they born? Like innate. And me, I said, oh no, everything is learned. People aren't born knowing how to do certain things, or they're not born, knowing this, because that was my thought. Yeah. But then I had my first child, and when I had her, she started doing something, and I was like, okay, she's too young to really know what she's doing, but I was like, that mimics me, or it was mimicking my husband. And I had to change my thought. I had to understand that some things are learned, but some things is like it's your nature. You're born, and it just happens. But as I listen to you talk about transference, and I know they say, and you're a mother, I know they say sometimes babies in utero, they feel what's happening with mom, and they hear. Tell me your opinion. What do you think as it relates to, is all behavior, would you say is all learned? Do you think there's a transference in the womb? I mean, just kind of humor me a little bit with that.
I'm of the belief, Andrea, that most of our behaviors are learned, most of them. However, some of them, I believe, are innate. And you talked a little bit about motherhood, and again, I'm blessed to be a mother. We, my husband and I, we have a 13-year-old.
Okay.
And so I'm a mother of one. And I just believe that as much as you can read about parenting and being a mother, some of those motherly instincts that we have, I just believe kick in. And I believe some of that is innate, to be the ability to have different things on your plates, and to organize and to be nurturing as a parent. Some of those things I just believe that we are born with.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I do believe a lot of our behaviors that we display are learned. So again, how did I learn how to like cook and clean and change, a diaper and be a caregiver to my husband? Those things I saw, through my mom and my stepdad growing up. I saw how my mom used her executive functioning skills and ran her home, and how she organized and how she saved, and those things. I don't think that I would be part of who I am today without watching my mom. And growing up in a pretty organized environment helps me to have a household that is organized and efficient. But let's say I grew up, Andrea, in a home full of chaos and confusion and dysfunction. And I see that. I've seen that in working with clients. I have seen that in working with children in the school system. I'm going to just say 8 times out of 10, when I'm dealing with or working with a family or individual, or working with children in the school system, and I say, hey, wait a minute, something's going on. Let's stop. I'm always asking, what's going on at home? Whether it's a child, adolescent, what is going on currently at home? And let's peek into that upbringing. And what I usually get as a therapist is that there was some chaos, or there were some underlying mental health issues, or substance abuse issues, or relational conflict issues. And so a lot of my clients share with me part of why I do what I do, and this is not initially. This is where the breakthrough comes, where the hard work happens, like an aha moment. I realized, so that's why I do what I do, or that's why I don't reciprocate affection, or that's why I realize the communication is not where it needs to be, because that's not how it was for me growing up. I realize that's why I'm not affectionate with my child, because I don't know how to do it, because that's not how I grew up.
I didn't see that.
I didn't see that. And so that's one of the biggest pieces of joy that I have working as a therapist and serving my clients, is helping to have them to have that breakthrough moment and that aha moment, that I realize part of me changing some cycles is for me to have an understanding of kind of what went on in my life, or what's going on in my life. And so awareness is really, really important in change.
So if there are people that are in need of mental health, some resources, where would you direct them? What would you tell them they could go to get the help that they need?
There are so many mental health resources out there. And again, one of the things, especially with May being Mental Health Awareness Month, again, the theme of this month is Tools to Thrive. And so we're all about people in our community accessing mental health care, and just gaining access and utilizing those resources in order for them to have the lives that they want to have. And so one of the resources that I would start with is NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Health. And so for those individuals that have access to the internet, or the internet on their phones, they can go to NAMI.org, or they can call 1-800-950-NAMI, or 1-800-950-6264. 24 hours, 7 days a week for free confidential counseling. Again, one of the things that we've seen in the pandemic is an increase in teletherapy as well.
Yes.
And so there are places, and a lot of people may have seen commercials for Talkspace.com or BetterHelp.com. And again, if you are working for a company that provides health insurance, I would also say, Andrea, look into your insurance company, because a lot of times the Blue Cross Blue Shields or United Healthcares, they have access to EAP providers that can provide anywhere from maybe about 3 to 5 free counseling sessions with a counselor before insurance even charges exactly. And also if you want to go to psychologytoday.com, that also has an abundance of resources of therapists, and also gives you an idea as to whether or not you have access to a therapist that you want to see in person or use teletherapy, which is very, very popular right now given the pandemic.
Okay, so there are the resources are there. It's just a matter of knowing where to go to obtain help and to utilize those services. So I guess our takeaway for today, I know in the African American community, a lot of people feel as if black people don't get counseling. Black people don't do that. But again, mental health is just like your physical health. Just as if we see something dysfunctional with our body, our heart, our teeth, our eyes, and we seek medical attention, then people need to realize and understand that even if something up here may seem a little off balance, that we should not just ignore it. There is help, there are resources available, and it's just a matter of us deciding, okay, I want to be mentally healthy. And if it takes seeking a therapist, that it's okay to do that. So again, I appreciate you coming to talk to me today. I appreciate the conversation. And I would like to encourage all of you that are watching us today, take care of yourself, not only your physical body, but again, your mental health, your brain. You need to make sure that you are balanced. There is no shame in trying to be the best you that you can be. Again, I'd like to thank my guest today, Ms. Simone Bradley. I thank you all for tuning in. I ask that you like our Facebook and follow us on YouTube. And again, this wraps up another episode of Amazing Conversations. I am your host, Lady Andrea Revills. Have a great night.